Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're tackling one of the absolute most critical yet somehow frequently overlooked steps in protecting your biggest financial investment, your home. Whether you're a complete beginner gearing up for your very first remodel, or you're a seasoned homeowner dealing with a sudden emergency repair, verifying your contractor's license in Minnesota it's absolutely essential. So today we're going to walk through a comprehensive step-by-step guide on exactly how to do this. We're covering the whole shebang, from the hidden, honestly terrifying dangers of skipping this step to the exact buttons you need to click on the state's website. By the end of this explainer, you'll have the practical tools and the confidence to properly vet any professional before they swing a single hammer on your property. Here's a quick roadmap for today. We'll hit 1. The risks of unlicensed contractors. 2. The step-by-step DLI license search. 3. Interpreting your search results. 4. Real-world enforcement actions. 5. Essential hiring tips. And wrap up with 6. Final thoughts and our disclaimer. Let's start with Section 1, the risks of unlicensed contractors and the high stakes for homeowners. So imagine this scenario for a second. You've saved up for months for that dream kitchen remodel. You hire a super friendly contractor who gave you a fantastic, maybe unusually low price. But then, halfway through, they just stop showing up. The plumbing is leaking, the new electrical work is sparking, and when you finally try to get some help, you realize they weren't licensed. Suddenly, you're sitting in a botched remodel with absolutely zero legal recourse through the state. It is literally a homeowner's worst nightmare. So I have to ask, are you ready to hire a Minnesota contractor? Because if you have a name or a business in mind right now, but you haven't independently verified their state license yet, you might be walking straight into a massive financial trap. It's so easy to assume someone is qualified just because they show up in a nice truck or have a slick website, right? But the state of Minnesota requires hard proof. The deck is heavily stacked against you if you hire outside the law. First off, performing residential building contractor work without a license in Minnesota is actually a misdemeanor offense. But the biggest blow to you as the homeowner is losing access to the Contractor Recovery Fund. This is a state fund that reimburses consumers who suffer financial losses due to a licensed contractor's misconduct. It can pay out thousands of dollars, but if your contractor is unlicensed, you get zero protection from this fund. None. Plus, unlicensed contractors often skip out on workers' compensation insurance. If a worker gets hurt on your property, you could end up being personally liable for that. And finally, unlicensed work almost always means unpermitted work. That leads to major building code violations that will severely decrease your property's value when you eventually try to sell. Now, when you hire a licensed professional, you're legally entitled to specific protections. Minnesota law actually requires builders and remodelers to provide statutory warranties. So you get a 1-year warranty on general building standards, a 2-year warranty on plumbing, electrical, and HVAC systems, and a massive 10-year warranty protecting you against major structural defects. This statutory warranty is basically your safety net, but it relies entirely on you working with legitimate licensed professionals who are bound by Minnesota statutes. Moving on to Section 2, the step-by-step DLI license search, which is a homeowner's best tool. The Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, or DLI for short, maintains a free, real-time public license lookup database. This is your holy grail for verification. Here is the overall process. First, we visit the DLI's official IMS portal. Second, we navigate to the license and registration section. Third, we enter our search criteria, like the contractor's name or license number. And finally, we review their current status. Don't worry if this sounds a bit technical. I'm going to hold your hand and walk you right through the exact steps. All right, step 1. When you arrive at the IMS portal login page, you do not need to create a complicated account or remember yet another new password to run this background check. Simply choose Continue as Guest. This makes it incredibly fast and easy for any homeowner to just jump right in. Let's move to the next screen and see how this builds. Once you're in as a guest, you'll see a section labeled License and Registration. Right inside there, you're going to want to click the button that says Search License/Registration Holders. Hitting that button takes you directly to the search tool itself. You can use the drop-down menu to select how exactly you want to search. You can search by a specific license number, which, by the way, the contractor absolutely should have provided to you up front, or you can search by their business name. If you use a license number, just remember the format usually includes 2 letters followed by 6 numbers, and you enter it with no spaces or dashes. Section 3, Interpreting your search results. Let's learn how to read the data. Okay, so finding the contractor in the database is only half the battle, right? We need to know how to actually read the data so we don't get tricked. So the crucial point here is understanding the massive difference between being registered and being fully licensed. This is a huge point of confusion that catches so many homeowners off guard. If a contractor's record begins with the prefix IR, it means they are merely registered. Registered contractors are not considered licensed to perform services that require a license. Registration is basically just a way for the state to track them for tax and independent contractor misclassification purposes. What you really want to see is that they are actively licensed, which means they've actually passed the required state exams, they hold liability and property damage insurance, and they are bonded. When you look at their record, the status absolutely must say active. This means their paperwork is perfectly valid, up to date, and they are legally permitted to do the work. Also, make sure to check the expiration date. A license that says expired means they haven't bothered to renew it. And a revoked status? Well, that means the state has taken formal enforcement action against them, which is a massive red flag. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, Real-World Enforcement Actions. The DLI does not mess around. You might be wondering, does the state actually police this stuff? And the answer is a resounding yes. Listen to this direct quote from a real 2024 DLI enforcement action report against a company in Lakeville, Minnesota. The state issued an administrative order demanding the respondent to cease and desist from acting or holding himself out as a contractor. The state actively investigates complaints and issues these stop work orders to disreputable contractors who violate licensing laws. But they don't just stop at telling them to quit working. The Department of Labor and Industry actually has the authority to assess civil penalties up to a staggering $10,000 per violation per day for unlicensed work. That number alone proves just how seriously Minnesota takes residential construction safety. If a contractor is willing to risk a $10,000 daily fine to skirt the law, just imagine the risks they are willing to take with your home's structural integrity. Section 5, Essential Hiring Tips that go beyond the license lookup. Now that you know how to master the DLI license lookup, let's broaden our lens a bit. Verifying the license is step one for sure, but there are other critical due diligence steps you absolutely must take before you sign a contract or hand over a deposit. You need to watch out for these major red flags. Be very wary of a contractor who shows up in an unmarked van or uses high-pressure sales tactics. Never, ever hire someone who refuses to provide their DLI license number or demands full payment upfront. But here is the absolute most important one. If a contractor asks you, the homeowner, to pull the building permits for the job, run the other way. If you obtain the permits, you legally become the general contractor. That means you are now personally responsible for ensuring all code compliance for the work they perform. Never let a contractor push that liability onto you. Furthermore, the DLI strongly recommends that you always get at least 3 detailed written bids for any home construction or major remodeling project. Remember, the lowest bid is not always the best bid. Also, because contractor licenses are tied to legal business entities, it's incredibly smart to cross-reference their business name with the Minnesota Secretary of State website, just to ensure their corporate entities in active good standing. And finally, Section 6, Final Thoughts and our disclaimer. We have covered a lot of ground today, from the terrifying risks of the unlicensed market straight through the step-by-step clicks required to protect yourself on the state's portal. Let's do a quick recap of the key takeaways. Number 1, always use the DLI IMS portal to verify an active license status before hiring. Number 2, never confuse an IR registered contractor with a fully licensed professional. Number 3, remember that hiring a licensed contractor is your only ticket to leveraging the Contractor Recovery Fund if things go sideways. Number 4, keep your eyes peeled for those red flags, especially contractors who want you to pull the permits. And finally, number 5, get every single detail from brand names of materials to project timelines in writing. Before we wrap up completely, just a quick note. This explainer is strictly for educational purposes to help you navigate publicly available tools. Every home and every contract is unique. Always perform your own personal due diligence and be sure to consult directly with the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry or qualified legal professionals for advice that's specific to your construction situation. I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to consider the next time you're reviewing a bid. If a contractor's paperwork and professional credentials don't pass the basic DLI test, what makes you think their construction work is going to pass a city building inspection? Protect your home, protect your finances, and always, always verify that license. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy remodeling.